I think my favorite thing about this show, as it stands, with 3 episodes now released, is how, one, it perfectly balances that action, adventure, thrill ride that I think people come to know and love about anime, with those over-the-top action set pieces, especially when they're as well animated as these ones. But 2, how much information it gives you at a quick enough pace that it doesn't ever feel like it's wasting your time dragging out those inevitable questions like, hey, is Cosette still there, or did this Destiny character completely take over? And while yes, it's still up in the air of could she potentially be saved, because apparently this music art is completely an anomaly, something that shouldn't exist, something that shouldn't happen. Hell, the consuming of our boy Takt shouldn't even happen here. So there is still the uncertainty and the potential of bringing her back, or maybe regaining or kind of merging the original with the new. But they, at the very least, bring it up within an episode of the question popping up, because there's bigger fish to fry. In that case, why are they heading to New York? Well, potentially to save Cosette, who we now know why her name is Destiny, because Destiny is essentially a brand new person. It's an interesting concept. I mean, if you were to throw it at, like, this question at people, I don't think there'd be a universally agreed opinion. So, either A, your loved one's just gonna die and you're gonna bury or cremate them, that's an option, or 2, a brand new person can essentially take over their body. It's not a forgotten memory thing, it's not this or that, it's a completely brand new person. Would you want them walking around in their skin, or would you rather them be dead? And I think what makes that question so difficult is because there's always going to be that potential, right? There's going to be that question, but what if they're still there? Or at the very least, you get to see them on a day-to-day basis, and maybe that will make the loneliness better. It's such a fascinating concept for a show that blends so much about anime that I think I've come to know and love, from the kind of master-servant fight scenes, those over-the-top monsters, which I still love the design. I've seen some people talk down about the design for them not being overly complex, but I think their colorfulness and the almost like beast-like fairy tale designs for me really kind of sells it as not your typical anime monsters that you fight every single anime season. But I really love seeing who we get introduced to, Lenny as well as Titan. Which, I mean, as soon as you see them, you can tell there's something odd about our 2 central characters. Because something that I just naturally assume, because we've only interacted with Takt as well as Destiny, in terms of how that operates, in terms of the maestro and music art, things like that. So for me, him losing an arm or being consumed, while yes, he's probably not fighting to the proper potential that he could, the idea of him being hurt, the idea of him being consumed essentially, I thought that was just how it was going to be. But nope, we can see with Lenny and Titan, that's not what's supposed to happen. And while sometimes those scenes where characters sit around a dinner table and they discuss fundamentals of the world and you get a lot of information about how things work, that can be considered boring to some, and sometimes I fall in that group, but most of the times when people find that boring, I get a kick out of it. But I think this one is rather special because they essentially just lost their loved one. You have someone who was probably going to have that romantic childhood friend romance, and then you have a sister who lost her sister, right? I mean, essentially, this is a mourning, and you need these questions asked. One is trying to flee for understandable emotional reasons. The other is wanting to know, is she there? What is the purpose of this? To start the show off with episode 1, we saw her blow apart a diner. We saw her basically be a rampaging lunatic, or as it stated in this episode, an untamed beast. I think it's really interesting the fact that we have something where you kick the show off just assuming that's her personality. Episode 2 comes in, shows us a very nice, sweet girl playing music, gets killed, turns into who we met in the first episode, and then with episode 3, we learn that it's a ticking time bomb. Not only for our boy, because he is going to die, his life force is being used as energy, shouldn't happen. The whole awakening scene, we get confirmed that that's an anomaly that shouldn't happen. So there is that unknown. What if the unknown could actually become a brand new situation where the music art could end up merging into the original self? It's something that supposedly never happened, so maybe by the time they reach New York, something like that could happen, and Cosette could return. What if we have something of the nature of Destiny and Takt become very close, similar to how him and Cosette was, and then he has the option, which one stays, Destiny or Cosette, and he cares for both equally. It'd be an interesting concept. Naturally, you would assume he would choose Cosette and Destiny would understand that, the childhood friend dynamic is something that means more. But you can see the pieces click more and more, and they're really revealing things in interesting ways. And I mentioned it, I think it was in last week's video, about how I love all the central characters. And while we know Lenny and Titan are going to stick around forever, or at the very least, they're going to part ways eventually, hopefully not because of death, and hopefully because they just move on like they mentioned. It's nice that now that we have 2 more supporting characters into the mix, that they're just fun. Like, I feel like shows like these, and I can even think of a show like Listeners as an example. It was a MAPPA original that just really fell off because the characters weren't even anything close to this, and this almost feels like a redo of what they probably wanted that show to become. So it's nice to see that every character is bounty. I mean, you got the flirtatious nature of Lenny, who, you know, in the middle of him basically flirting, saying, you know, who wouldn't want to consume you, he's also visibly concerned about what the hell is going on with these two because it's not something that's normal. As you also have Titan, who's basically kind of like Cosette, but I guess not as destructive. She very much loves the food, but she's not gonna blow apart a diner to go after someone. Though it's kind of crazy that the first truly destructive thing that Cosette did, or Destiny I should say, it's gonna be hard to remember what to do here, but the fact that it was Takt's house is just heartbreaking, because when, you know, you have Anna being like, hey, you know, you shouldn't let her do that, he's like, there's nothing left there anyway, because his magical memories and those musical memories are gone. The fact that they pretty much kick this episode off with him, you know, remembering them playing together, to then it just being him and visibly seeing the loneliness. It's just so well done. I have to say though, when we got the first little bit of the action, I love that they didn't just skip ahead back to where episode 1 was in the timeline. The fact that we got to see them fight and, you know, just seeing him actually be a part of the fight. I wasn't exactly sure how much the kind of like maestros, the conductors, would be a part of the action. And this was kind of nice because it felt like he was actually a part of it. It wasn't him just performing the song. And I love the fact that they actually reveal why her name was Destiny based on the song that she's based off of. But still, it was nice to just see that Sokka really flourish. And I was expecting that was going to be the only action part because, I mean, it was just clear it was going to be more of a setup or it'd be like an explanation episode. And they lived up to that in more entertaining ways than I was personally expecting. But then the end of the episode, I thought, while yes, it didn't look as crazy as maybe the intro of the episode for obvious reasons, a forest scene fighting some monsters versus a town ablaze and everything going to chaos, it makes sense which one naturally would look more visually impressive than the other. But it didn't change the fact that the ending of the episode was exhilarating as well. I just find Takt of Destiny to be so good. It's so compelling on a narrative level. The world, I think especially with episodes like these, really gets your mind racing, like the meteorites coming down, that's how these creatures came to be. They're laying it out in interesting enough ways, and the way they did info dump and exposition around a dinner table, essentially mourning the loss of a loved one while kind of giving you that exposition for the viewer. It's just a really well-made production. We're 3 episodes in, and it feels like this story is moving at a quick enough pace that it's never dry or boring or they're wasting our time, but there's still that air of mystery while giving us the questions that we probably want to see, like, hey, is she still there? No, but she's also an anomaly, so you can't fully say for sure, right? Incredible episode. Honestly, I might go as far as say this was the one that kind of hooked me in the most, mainly because it had so much information and kind of like expanded my thought about what the show could be. In terms of action, I think there's been better over the past 3, but still, this was the one that really hooked me in the most, and I mean, if anyone has a 3-episode rule, I'm pretty sure these 3 episodes are going to sell more people than, you know, those who are probably going to part ways and go for something different. But let me know your thoughts and feelings on this week's episode. What did you think? Favorite moment, theories on where Cosette/Destiny might go from here? Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.